If you have ever used the same stain on two pieces of furniture and wondered why one absorbed evenly while the other turned patchy, muted, or uneven, the difference usually comes down to how that particular wood absorbs the stain. In this video, I'm applying the same oil-based stain to 5 different wood species, and I'll be keeping the sanding, the cleaning, and the application process consistent throughout, so that we can see how these 5 types of wood absorb the stain for different outcomes. So today we will be working with maple, pine, beech, oak, and ash. Now maple, pine, and beech each are known as difficult to stain wood types. This is because of their wood structure. Pine is a soft wood which absorbs a stain at different speeds across its growth lines, which can lead to an uneven look when stained. On the other hand, maple and beech are both dense, close-grained woods. They absorb the stain differently across a wood's surface, which will cause that uneven, blotchy look. To keep this video simple and showcase a comparison of these 5 types of wood after being stained, we will keep the prep and stain the same. I'm not going to try and prevent the blotching, but rather allow you to see how stain reacts across these types of woods. But don't worry, I will showcase options on how to minimize stain blotching in an upcoming video. Now the prep for these boards was incredibly simple. I sanded each of them 80, 120, 180, and 240 grit, taking time in between to clean each board and to apply a new pencil mark to ensure even sanding across all the boards. The stain I'll be using today is from Osmo, and it's important that you always stir any pigment-based stain thoroughly. To apply the stain, I will be using a rag, but you can also use a brush or a foam brush, whatever method you prefer. And you want to apply in long strokes with the grain and try to avoid any overlapping. The final and most crucial step is to wipe back the surface. If you allow oil stain to dry on the surface, it will dry as a sticky residue. So take a clean, dry rag and just wipe back any remaining oil from the surface prior to it starting to dry. So all our boards are now stained, and let's review the outcome. Pine is notoriously difficult to stain because it absorbs unevenly across the board. The softer early wood sections take in more stain, while the denser late wood sections take in less, which creates that visible contrast and blotching. Now knots can make this even more unpredictable because they're much denser and often absorb stain very differently from the surrounding wood. Maple is dense and tight grained, which means it resists absorption even more than open woods. When you apply stain to maple, less pigment will penetrate the surface, so the color often appears lighter and more subdued. Depending on the board, you can also see areas where the absorption varies slightly because of small differences in the wood density. Now, maple's stain challenge is resistance to penetration of the stain, not dramatic blotching like pine. Beech is also relatively dense, but its grain structure can cause subtle variation in absorption across the surface. It does not typically show the strong striping of pine, but it can develop uneven patches where the growth patterns shift, which is why it sometimes surprises people who expect it to behave like an open, grained wood. You need to be aware of beech, as it's frequently used in furniture and it's notoriously difficult to stain, although this time it looked pretty good. Oak is ring porous and open-grained wood, which allows the stain to penetrate and settle into the pores evenly. That is why the color appears stronger and more consistent, and why oak is often described as an easy-to-stain wood type. And finally, ash. It's also a ring porous wood and behaves similarly to oak in terms of its absorption, but its natural base tone and the grain patterns can influence how bold or warm the final color appears. Even within the same family of porous woods, you can see subtle shifts in how the stain presents itself. What changes across these boards is not the product, and it's not the technique. What changed was how deeply and how evenly each wood absorbed the stain. If this was useful, hit the like button and subscribe so I know to keep making these kinds of comparison videos. Now, understanding that wood stain differently to each other helps you set realistic expectations before you ever open that can of stain. When you understand how wood absorbs stain, you can approach each project with a clear idea of what the finish will be.